Far away, on a planet bathed in the gentle glow of twin suns, where forests stretched endlessly beneath skies, painted in shimmering hues, and crystal cities rose like giants from the earth. The Zinari Empire thrived with pride and power. Zinari were known throughout their galaxy for their unmatched strength, to sharp minds and proud traditions that had been passed down for generations. At the heart of this empire was its royal family, revered and feared, ruling with firm hands and lofty expectations. But beneath the glittering surface of this proud society, there was a hidden cruelty, a rigidness that left little room for weakness or difference. In the grand palace, where marble halls echoed with the footsteps of nobles and servants alike, a secret had been buried away. Princess Lyra, the youngest daughter of the royal bloodline, was born unable to walk. From the moment she opened her eyes, she was different. Where others took their first steps with ease, she struggled to even sit upright. Her hands trembled, and her legs remained weak. In a culture where strength was honored above all, where the royal children were trained to fight, to run, and to lead their people into glory, Lyra was seen as a burden, a shadow cast over the family's shining legacy. The royal court whispered behind closed doors, their voices filled with disappointment and fear. They spoke of her as a failure, as a stain on the family name. The king and queen, bound by their pride and the demands of their people, made a cruel decision. They chose to abandon her. Not in a public trial or execution, but quietly, in the dead of night, far away from the palace's gleaming walls. They left Lyra in a small, forgotten village near the wild edges of the planet, a place where the stars seemed closer, and the trees whispered secrets to those who would listen. Here, in this remote settlement, the people lived simple lives, far from the grand ambitions of the empire. It was a place where no one knew the name of a royal princess, or cared for the weight of her legacy. Alone and confused, Lyra lay on a rough blanket beneath a sky full of unfamiliar constellations, the cool breeze brushing her pale skin. She did not understand why her own family had forsaken her, why they had left her to face a world so vast and unknown without protection. Tears came quietly, mingling with the dust beneath her cheek. But fate had not finished with her yet. Watching from a distance was Kale, an old man with a face carved by time and eyes bright with quiet wisdom. Once Kale had been a famous explorer, a man who journeyed across the stars and mapped distant worlds. He had faced dangers most could not imagine, and returned with stories that inspired generations. But years had passed, and with age he chose solitude over adventure, settling in this forgotten village, far from the politics and chaos of the empire. When Kale found the abandoned princess, something inside him stirred a mixture of compassion and a sense of duty. Despite her frailty, he saw the spark of life within Lyra's eyes, a light that refused to be extinguished. Without hesitation, Kale took her into his care, wrapping her in warm cloth and carrying her to his humble home, where wooden shelves held relics of his past and walls whispered tales of distant galaxies. He did not know what the future held for this little girl, but he promised himself that she would never face the cold world alone again. As days turned into weeks, the villagers whispered about the old man and his mysterious charge. Some were skeptical, fearing trouble might follow the princess's bloodline, while others felt pity for the child who had been cast away like an unwanted shadow. Yet Kale's steady presence brought calm and hope. He taught Lyra to look beyond her body's limits, showing her the beauty in the world that did not depend on walking or running. He told her stories of stars and planets, of ancient heroes who triumphed not with strength, but with heart and mind. Slowly, Lyra began to understand that her worth was not defined by the steps she could take, but by the courage she carried inside. But the Empire was not done with her yet. Rumors began to spread back in the Crystal City's whispers of a lost princess alive in the wilderness, growing stronger each day. The royal family, haunted by their decision, faced their own fears as old enemies threatened the borders of their world. In the shadows of the palace, advisors debated whether to find Lyra again or erase her existence forever. Yet, in the quiet village where Kale and Lyra lived, hope blossomed against all odds. The abandoned princess, once forgotten and forsaken, was beginning a journey that would challenge the very foundations of her empire, and prove that true strength is not born from the body alone, but from the spirit that refuses to give up. And so, beneath the wide-open sky and among the whispering trees, the story of Lyra and Cale began a tale of compassion, courage, and the quiet power of an unlikely bond that would echo across the stars. Cale's modest home sat on the edge of the village, a quiet place built from wood and stone, surrounded by towering trees that swayed gently in the breeze. It was not much a small fire crackled in the hearth. Shelves filled with old books and strange devices lined the walls, but it was a refuge, a place far removed from the harsh judgments of the palace and the cold indifference of strangers. When Cale first carried Princess Lyra through the village gates and into this humble shelter, the villagers watched silently, curiosity mixed with doubt. How could an old man, long retired from his days of exploration, protect a royal princess, especially one so vulnerable? Yet Cale made no promises to the world, only to Lyra. His hands were rough but gentle as he settled her on a soft mat near the fire, careful to keep her comfortable. There, in that small, warm room, something unexpected began to happen. Lyra's sharp mind, which had been hidden beneath layers of fear and sadness, started to awaken. Though her body refused to cooperate, her eyes shone with a new curiosity. Cale, with his years of experience and endless patience, became more than a caretaker. He became a teacher, a guide to a world far greater than the one Lyra had ever known. Each day he brought her stories not of princes and palaces, but of stars that burned bright across the universe, of ancient technologies buried deep beneath their own planet's surface, and of forgotten heroes whose courage changed the fate of worlds. His voice, calm and steady, painted pictures in her mind tales of strange creatures, of vast galaxies filled with wonders and dangers. Lyra listened, spellbound, her imagination stretching far beyond the small room and the limitations of her body. Cale showed her old star maps, faded and cracked by time, tracing paths across constellations she had never dreamed existed. He taught her how to read ancient scripts and explain the mysteries of machines that could bend space and time. She could not walk, her mind traveled freely, soaring through the cosmos with every story. Days turned into weeks, and Lyra's confidence began to grow. No longer did she see herself as a helpless child abandoned by her family. Instead, she realized strength could come from wisdom, from the ability to think, plan, and understand. Cale noticed the change in her too, where before she had been silent and withdrawn, now she asked questions, challenged ideas, and sometimes even smiled, a small but powerful sign of hope. The old man's heart softened, and for the first time in many years, he felt a renewed purpose. But life outside the cottage was not as peaceful. The village was quiet but restless, shadows of fear lingering as rumors from the Empire's heart spread. Whispers of war, of enemies gathering beyond their borders, reached even this far corner of the planet. Some villagers feared that harboring the lost princess might bring danger upon them all. Yet Cale stood firm, protecting Lyra not just from the world's cruelty, but from its doubt. He taught her to observe and listen carefully, to use her mind as a shield and a weapon. They built small devices together. Using scraps, Cale had collected tools that could send messages over long distances, and even simple machines that moved by themselves. Lyra's hands learned to manipulate these devices with precision, proving to herself and others that her disability did not mean weakness. Slowly, the villagers' fear began to turn into respect. They saw how Lyra, with Cale's guidance, could solve problems and bring new ideas that made their lives easier. Children began to gather near the cottage, eager to hear Cale's stories and watch Lyra's clever inventions. Hope, long buried under layers of despair, started to bloom like the wildflowers that carpeted the nearby fields. Still, beneath this fragile peace, a question lingered: what fate awaited Lyra beyond the village? The Empire's leaders, proud and unforgiving, would not easily forget the princess who was once cast aside. And somewhere deep within the crystal halls of the palace, plans were being made. But Cale refused to let fear rule their days. He reminded Lyra that true strength comes not from the body, but from the mind and heart combined. Night, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and stars took their places in the velvet sky, Kale and Lyra would sit by the fire, studying the stars and dreaming of a future where she would rise, not as a princess bound by rules, but as a leader who could change her world. Lyra's spirit, once broken and abandoned, grew brighter with every passing day. And in the quiet corners of the universe where hope often hides, a new light began to shine, one that even the darkest shadows could not extinguish. Far beyond the peaceful village where Lyra and Kale lived, the Zanari Empire's grand cities sparkled under the twin suns, their crystal towers reflecting light like stars brought to earth. But beneath the shimmering beauty, tension gripped the heart of the empire like a slow poison. News arrived swiftly and harshly. An alien armada unlike any before was moving closer, their warships dark and immense, cutting through space with silent, deadly purpose. These invaders were not just ordinary enemies. They came with weapons far beyond anything the Zanari fleets had faced in centuries. Their ships moved with speed and precision, firing beams that disabled entire squadrons in moments. Panic spread quickly from the high towers of the royal palace to the crowded streets below, where merchants, scholars, and soldiers alike whispered fears of destruction and defeat. The empire's leaders, proud and confident in their traditions, were caught off guard. Their fleets, once considered unstoppable, faltered as the alien forces advanced relentlessly. The royal family, sitting on thrones of crystal and power, found themselves paralyzed by their own arrogance. They continued to trust in old ways and old heroes, unwilling to see that the world around them had changed. Instead of uniting the people, they clung to pride, refusing to admit weakness or seek help beyond their trusted inner circle. The cities, once vibrant and alive, grew quiet under the shadow of fear. Streets that had been filled with laughter and music now held tense, crowds watching the skies for signs of attack. In the small village far away, Kale and Lyra listened to the rumors carried on the wind. The old man's face darkened with concern, and Lyra felt a strange mix of fear and determination stirring deep inside her. They both understood that the Empire's proud leadership was not enough to save their people. What was needed now was something newer leadership that could see beyond power and pride, one that could bring the Empire together through wisdom and unity. Kale shared stories with Lyra of ancient times, long before the Zanari had built their crystal cities, when different tribes had joined forces to survive great dangers. He explained how true strength came from working together, from listening and learning, not from standing alone on a throne. Lyra's mind raced with these ideas. She thought about the people she had heard of, the common folk who suffered silently beneath the Empire's grand facade. If the proud rulers could not protect, them who would? She realized that her own weakness in the body did not mean she was weak in spirit. In fact, perhaps her different view of the world was exactly what was needed in these dark times. As the alien ships drew closer, Kale and Lyra began to prepare in secret. They gathered knowledge from forgotten texts, studying old technologies that might still hold power. The old man repaired ancient machines, while Lyra learned to operate them using her sharp mind and steady hands. Together, they dreamed of a way to help their people, even if the Empire's leaders refused to change. Meanwhile, within the palace walls, the royal family faced growing unrest. Advisors argued loudly, blaming each other for failures and lost battles. The queen wept in her chambers while the king paced endlessly, unable to find a solution. Outside, protests began to rise as citizens demanded action and protection. But the old ways held strong, and the council stubbornly rejected ideas that threatened their authority. In the streets, whispers of a lost princess began to spread, a girl who had been cast away because of her weakness, but who might now hold the key to saving them all. The rumors reached the ears of some palace insiders, creating unease and suspicion. Some saw the princess as a threat, a reminder of their own mistakes. Others wondered if she might be the hope the Empire so desperately needed. In the quiet village, Kale looked at Lyra with a mixture of pride and worry. "The time is coming," he said softly, when you will have to decide who you truly are and what you want to become. Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of the future pressing down on her small shoulders. She had been abandoned once, but now she knew she could not run from her destiny. The Empire was in danger, and the people needed a leader who understood more than strength alone, someone who could inspire hope, unite divided hearts, and face the darkness with courage and wisdom. The stars outside twinkled coldly, but inside Kale's home, a new light was kindling, one that might one day shine across the Empire and beyond, proving that even in the face of overwhelming threat, the true power of a leader lies not in armies or weapons, but in the strength of the human spirit. In the quiet village where Kale and Lyra had found refuge, a remarkable transformation was underway. Though Lyra's body remained fragile and limited by her paralysis, her mind was sharper than ever, honed by years of learning and the ancient knowledge Kale had shared with her. Deep within the planet's forgotten caves, places whispered about in old stories and long avoided by most, the old explorer and the young princess began uncovering relics of a time when their world had been protected by powerful technologies long lost to the ages. These caves were filled with strange machines covered in dust and vines, their purpose forgotten but their potential still alive beneath layers of rust and silence. Kale, with his experience and careful hands, taught Lyra how to understand the intricate mechanisms, and together they breathed new life into the ancient devices. Despite her physical challenges, Lyra's unique perspective allowed her to see patterns and connections that others missed. She could think beyond the battlefield strategies favored by the Empire's proud generals, imagining clever ways to turn the enemy's strengths against them without the need for brute force. As the alien armada's shadow loomed ever closer, scattered resistance groups across the planet struggled to organize. Soldiers and civilians alike were confused and fearful, their leaders unsure how to fight an enemy so different and so powerful. Into this chaos, Lyra emerged quietly but powerfully. As a symbol of hope, news of the abandoned princess, once forgotten and rejected, spread quickly among the rebels and those still loyal to the true spirit of the Zinari people. They saw in her not a weak girl, but a beacon of courage and intelligence, a leader who understood that victory would not come from weapons alone, but from unity, cleverness, and heart. Under Kale's watchful eye, Lyra sent messages across the resistance, using the old technology they had restored to coordinate small groups scattered throughout the wild lands. She taught them how to use traps, ambushes, and deceptions that turned the enemy's advanced ships into vulnerable targets. Her plans required patience and cunning rather than strength, and her voice, calm and steady, inspired confidence. The resistance, once fractured and disorganized, began to unite in purpose. Villages and towns, once resigned to falling under alien rule, took up arms with new hope. Lyra's example reminded them that even the smallest among them could make a difference. At the same time, Kale worked tirelessly to repair and activate a forgotten defense system hidden deep underground. A network of energy shields and automated turrets designed to protect the planet's most important cities. It was a dangerous task, filled with the risk of discovery by enemy scouts and the possibility of failure. But Lyra never wavered. She spent long hours studying the ancient schematics, learning to operate the system through complex controls that would have been impossible for many, but which she mastered through determination and the sharpness of her mind. As the alien fleet approached, tension mounted across the planet. The royal family remained trapped in their pride, unable to accept that salvation might come from the very princess they had abandoned. But the people saw it differently. They gathered quietly, away from the eyes of the palace guards, whispering of Lyra's courage and the old man's wisdom. When the first wave of the alien assault began, the resistance sprang into action. Using Lyra's strategies, small bands of fighters struck at enemy supply lines and communication hubs, disrupting the alien command. The ancient defense system flickered to life, casting shimmering barriers over the key cities, blocking devastating attacks and giving the resistance precious time to regroup. Lyra, though confined to her place in Kale's home, felt every victory, as if it were her own battle. Her mind raced, constantly adapting to the enemy's moves, anticipating their next strike. She discovered patterns in the invaders' tactics and found ways to exploit weaknesses others ignored. Her leadership was quiet but powerful, a steady beacon that guided those fighting in darkness. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The alien armada, once confident and unstoppable, found themselves frustrated and confused by the Resistance's clever defenses and unexpected attacks. Their advanced technology was matched by Lyra's ingenuity and the unyielding spirit of her people. The old empire, though faltering, still watched warily, unsure whether to intervene or dismiss the uprising as a passing threat. But Lyra's influence spread like wildfire. She became a living symbol that strength was not measured by muscle or speed, but by wisdom, courage, and the will to never give up. Stories of the paralyzed princess, who outsmarted an entire alien fleet, traveled from village to village, inspiring even those who had lost hope. And within Kale's quiet home, the bond between the old explorer and the young princess grew stronger. Rooted in shared struggle, the final battle for the Zinari Empire's future unfolded beneath a sky torn by thunder and fire, where once peaceful crystal towers now trembled in the face of a relentless alien armada. Lyra, though confined by her body, stood tall in spirit, her mind as sharp and clear as ever. With Kale by her side, she directed the united forces of her people through carefully crafted plans. Born from ancient knowledge and hard-earned wisdom, the Resistance fighters, once scattered and uncertain, moved as one under her guidance, striking with precision at the enemy's weak points and turning the invaders' own tactics against them. The alien armada, which had seemed unstoppable, found themselves surrounded by a force born not just of technology, but of hope and determination. Lyra's vision, shared through the old devices Kale had helped restore, connected soldiers, villagers, and outcasts alike, binding them with a common purpose that transcended fear and despair. As the battle raged, the royal family watched from the palace, their faces pale and filled with regret. They had underestimated the strength that lay beyond physical power, blind to the quiet courage of the daughter they had cast away. Yet now, as Lyra's brilliance turned the tide, even the proudest among them could no longer deny the truth. She was the true heart of their people. When the alien fleet finally began to retreat, battered and broken, a hush fell over the land. Victory was not won through violence alone, but through the unity. Lyra had inspired a unity that lifted the empire from the brink of destruction. In the aftermath, the royal family approached Lyra with humility, their voices quiet and sincere. They admitted their grave mistake in abandoning her and begged for forgiveness. Acknowledging the wisdom they had failed to see, Lyra, though deeply hurt by their past rejection, chose the path of forgiveness and healing. She spoke not of revenge, but of a future where every citizen, regardless of their abilities or past, would have a voice and a place in the new Zinari society. Her words echoed through the halls of the palace and across the cities, inspiring a hope that was stronger and more lasting than any weapon. The empire began to rebuild, not on the foundations of pride and division, but on a new vision of inclusion and shared strength. Leaders who had once been enemies came together, united by the example set by the paralyzed princess who had never given up. In the quiet corners of the world, Kale watched with a gentle smile, knowing that his role as protector and teacher had come to a meaningful end. He had seen firsthand how the smallest light could shine the brightest in the darkest times, and how courage born from compassion could change the course of history. As Lyra looked out over the planet she had helped save, her heart was filled not with bitterness, but with hope. She understood now that true strength was not measured by the body or by titles, but by the willingness to stand firm, to forgive, and to lead with wisdom and kindness. And so, under the twin suns of the Zinari world, a new dawn rose one, where every star in the sky seemed to shine a little brighter, reflecting the light of a princess who had once been abandoned, but who now stood as the greatest hope her people had ever known. Vision of a future where all could stand together. The planet's fate hung in the balance, but for the first time in many moons, there was a chance. A chance that the abandoned princess would not only rise, but lead her people to freedom, proving that even the most unlikely hero could change the course of history.